Josh, thank you so much. Bruchim habayim and erev tov. Welcome and good evening from Jerusalem. I am Rabbi Matt Berkowitz, Vice President of the Schechter Institutes, and it is my privilege to serve as moderator for this important update session on our Israel emergency projects. The arc of this hour will be as follows. Following my introduction, Rabbi David Galinkin will share words of Torah. We will then turn to updates and spotlights on 4 of our 5 emergency projects, giving you a snapshot of the remarkable work we are engaged in. Throughout the presentations, you are encouraged to send questions in the chat. You will also note that the giving link to our emergency campaign can also be found in the chat as well. Our final 10 minutes will be devoted to answering a few of these questions. We, of course, thank Josh Schuman, our Director of New Media, for organizing the magic behind the scenes. Thank you so much, Josh, for taking care of all the technology. We so appreciate it. You know well that the state of Israel is struggling through one of our darkest chapters. We are now in the 44th day of our campaign to dismantle Hamas and to put an end to this existential threat on Israel's southern border. The light that we are witness to in this month of Kislev is the unity of civil society in Israel, taking care of each other. And just as important, the loving, emotional, and financial support coming from the Jews of the diaspora, and especially the North American Jewish community. For those of us in Israel to be witness to 290,000 gathering in Washington, D.C. to support the state of Israel, it was a moment of the profound and enduring sense of Jewish peoplehood. It is also a moment of deep appreciation as we begin the week of Thanksgiving. We thank you for your generosity and responsiveness. It is my honor to invite Rabbi David Galinkin, President of Schechter Institutes, to share a Dvar Torah with us.
Thank you, Rabbi Matt Berkowitz. I'm broadcasting live from Temple Emmanuel in Newton, Massachusetts. I thank Rabbi Wes Garden Swartz for letting me use his computer and his office. At least there are books behind me as usual. I'm just completing a 10-day trip to the States, fundraising and speaking, and I'll return to that at the end. I would like to share with you 3 Jewish texts about the moment we are in. The first we all know well from the Talmud, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh. All Jews are responsible for one another, found in the Tractate of Shvuot and the Tractate of Sanhedrin. We have seen that in an incredible fashion since the war began, both within the state of Israel, within the Jews of the diaspora, and all of us working together as one people to help the state of Israel, to help the citizens and soldiers of the state of Israel, and to help release the captives from captivity. The second text is found in the weekday Shacharit service in the Ashkenazic tradition on Monday and Thursday mornings after the Torah reading. This song has become very popular during the past few weeks. It was apparently written by Rav Amram Gaon, or is at least found in his Sidur from the 9th century in Babylon. I'm going to sing it. Please put yourselves on mute so there won't be an echo, and you can sing along at home. Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, hanetunim betzara, betzara ubeshivya, haomdim ben bayam uben bayabasha. Hamakom yerachem, Yirachem aleim yotzieh mitzara, liravacha umeyafel aleora, umishiabud legeula, hashta bagala, ubizmane kariv. May the Holy One be merciful to our fellow Jews who wander over sea and land, who suffer oppression and imprisonment. May God soon bring them relief from distress and deliver them from darkness to light, and from subjugation to redemption, and let us say Amen. I was particularly moved at the huge demonstration in Washington, D.C. by the chorus, the young group of singers who sang this song Even though the song was written around the year 850 of the Common Era, it is incredibly relevant to our situation today, and it is inspiring to hear Jews throughout the world, including the synagogue that I am sitting in, recite this every day of the week now as they pray for the release of the captives and for the success of Tzahal. And the last text I would like to share with you is not well known. It is taken from this book, Tali's book, Friends Across the Sea, Chaverim Me'ever Layam. And I had the privilege of giving this text to the Tali staff when they published the book. This text was first published in 1854 from a manuscript. It is a letter from Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel, Portugal, 1472, to Rabbi Yechiel of Pisa in Italy. And I'm reading part of the letter. He says that 250 Jews were taken captive. They are hungry, thirsty, and naked, and much in need. When we saw the children of Zion sold as slaves and servants, we, the leaders of the Jewish community of Portugal, decided to call for their freedom and pay the ransom for their release. Like the 12 tribes of Israel, we sent 12 emissaries, myself included, from city to city and country to country to take the children of Israel out of Egypt and collect money to pay for their ransom. Thus far, we have ransomed 220 of the captives for a large sum of money, 10,000 gold coins. We have 30 prisoners yet to ransom who have fallen into the hands of very harsh masters. This is a brief account of the events that we have been struggling with day and night. On hearing this, all Jews will be outraged and profoundly moved. Written in 1472, it could have been written this week. And therefore, with these three texts, Kol Yisrael Arivim Zabazeh, Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, and the letter of Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel, we are all working together to help the Jews of Israel, to help the Chayalim of Tzahal, to help redeem the captives. And one of the ways we are doing that is through the Schechter projects we will hear about in a moment. I would like to conclude with one last story. This morning I gave my fourth lecture at Temple Emmanuel here in Boston. And at the end, the rabbi asked me, what can I take away from this trip? And I said, what I can take away is the incredible unity of the Jewish people. And when I finished speaking, for the first time in the 40 years I've been speaking at synagogues in the United States, I received a standing ovation. The standing ovation was not for me. It was for the concept of Jewish unity. And that is why we are here studying and learning today. Toda rabah.
Yasher Koach, Rabbi David Galinkin. I'm truly humbled and exalted to be speaking after you. I want to thank you for your heartfelt, truly heartfelt words of Torah, and for your beautiful singing, for your beautiful voice all around, just buoying our spirits in this very, very dark chapter. As the war broke out, our leadership at Schechter Institutes gathered to organize our particular response to Israeli society at this hour of need. That gathering gave birth to important projects which have already made their impact. Our Marpeh chaplaincy hotline and the activity of many of our chaplaincy alumni assisting in much needed relief efforts in Ofakim, establishing a program that would bring rabbinical support and presence to communities whose rabbis are serving in the IDF, along with a hotline on issues of mourning and burial. Tali, our educational fund, which immediately stepped up to the plate, providing support to administrators and teachers and teaching for Israelis displaced from the north and the south. And Midreshet Schechter, which is providing much needed assistance to young artists who fled one war and ended up in another. At the core of our presentation this evening, afternoon, this morning, wherever it is that you are, all across the world, we have invited 4 of the heads of branches of various parts of the Schechter Institutes who are leading these projects that are making a difference. Each presenter will have 7 minutes to present on their particular project. Our first presenter is Dr. Yael Rakov Drori, who is not only a trustee of the Schechter Institutes, but also an expert in economic urban development. She was the chair of the Association for the Development of Ofakim from 2010 until 2018. Since then, she continued her volunteering work, mainly as a mentor to a few local communities. She was present in all previous rounds of hostility when the town was under missile attacks and has a profound knowledge of emergency management. In so many ways, Yael is both a remarkable leader for the Schechter Institutes and an angel on the ground in Ofakim. I like to say that Yael has been doing God's work as these residents struggle to rebuild their lives after the devastation wrought by the attacks of October 7. Yael, I hand it off to you.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. Also, I'm very grateful to the Schechter institutions for their emergency campaign and for including in it the town of Ofakim. Let me start with a brief background information on Ofakim. Ofakim is a development town of about 34,000 residents located in the south of Israel, about 16 miles from the border with the Gaza Strip. It is one of the poorest Jewish towns in Israel. On Saturday, October 7, the residents of Ofakim woke up to the sound of sirens, warning them from a missile attack. Minutes later, dozens of Hamas terrorists arrived in town in pickup trucks, walked into houses, and started shooting people. Many looked out of the windows and immediately called the police. A policeman who arrived within 2 minutes was shot dead before he had a chance to get out of the patrol car. Some of the terrorists took this patrol car and continued the massacre elsewhere. Another police patrol car arrived at the scene, this time driven by the chief of the local police station. He held a heroic gunfight with the terrorists until he was severely injured. Besides the local police efforts, some armed residents went out to the streets to chase the terrorists away. Most of them were killed. There were only a few against tens of terrorists. Overall, 48 people from Ofakim were killed on Saturday. A few more were killed outside Ofakim or later. More than 120 were injured. Many houses were damaged. Also, there was an elderly couple taken hostage in their own home. After 20 hours, they were released by a special unit. On Tuesday, October 10, I drove to Ofakim for the first time after the attack. I went there mainly to understand the immediate needs. They were endless. I found a deserted town. People stayed in their homes for fear of encountering a terrorist. They ran out of food and medications and put extra pressure on the already stretched welfare room. On the streets of Ofakim, I saw only soldiers and emergency services. On one of the main roads, 2 burned down pickup trucks with Gaza Strip number plates. On the walls of many houses, you could see hundreds of bullet holes. I have spent some time in the welfare war room. They were overloaded with problems they had to attend to. Never before did they have to deal with organizing so many funerals. I visited Rachel Edri, the woman who was taken hostage with her husband. I run out of words to describe both her bravery and the trauma she's in. It was tough to listen. Since then, I've been busy solving problems as much as possible. For example, I've organized visits to a hospital in Tel Aviv, where a young couple and their baby were taken. They were burned down in their home in Kibbutz Nir Oz. The 3 of them were severely injured. Until today, they are in a life-threatening condition. The woman's parents are from Ofakim. They spend the whole time by their beds in the hospital. The visits are organized, aimed at supporting the parents. Another problem I have noticed is the growing number of residents who became new customers of the local soup kitchen. If during a normal weekday, about 230 residents come for a meal, Today, it is over 1,200. Half of them are children. Let me explain. There were 4 arenas of terror attacks in one neighborhood of Ofakim, Mishora Geffen. It is a very poor neighborhood, and it is well known that during emergencies, the poor get poorer. It takes them shorter time to collapse financially. When you add the trauma, the stress, the grief, the fact the schools are still closed, and the fear of going out in case there's another siren, you get a picture of a town hit very hard. Last week, I visited a few families in Ofakim. In one 2-bedroom flat, I found Levana, a single mother with 4 of her children. One of them is married with 2 young children. They moved in with the mother after the terror attack as they witnessed the killing of their neighbors. Not just the shooting, the neighbors were beheaded. They did not leave the mother's flat since October 7. Yes, 7 of them in this tiny flat. All of them were shaking, the children were crying the whole time. The mother has a small beauty salon. No one of her clients can even think of a beauty treatment. However, she must pay the rent and the bills. But with no income, not only she can't feed her family, she might lose her small business. I'm now sending her clients from Tel Aviv. In another home, I found a couple who made Aliyah from Ethiopia about 20 years ago. They sat in their living room with all the shutters down. Their son, a soldier who was at home for the weekend of the attack, grabbed his gun and went out barefoot and wearing shorts to chase the terrorists. He killed 2 of them, but the 3rd one came from behind and killed him. The terrorist grabbed Israel, the soldier, to the middle of the road and cut open his chest and stomach. The other things they did to the corpse, I can't even bring myself to tell. The mother saw it all. Can you imagine the pain, the devastation? Both parents sit in the dark and just pray to join their son. The extra help raised by the Schechter institutions go to the welfare war room. It was used to assist the families of the dead, injured, or those whose houses were damaged. With additional funds, your donations can bring some light to the residents of Ofakim. Thank you for listening.
Yael, thank you so much for truly the Avodat Kodesh, the very, very holy work that you're doing in Southern Israel. We cannot thank you enough for being our angel, our emissary there. And we hope to bring you a lot more support for what you're doing in Ofakim. It's now my privilege to turn to Rabbi Chaya Rowan Baker, who is the Dean of the Schechter Rabbinical Seminary. Ordained in 2007 by the Schechter Rabbinical Seminary, Rabbi Rowan Baker served as the rabbi of Kilat Ramot Zion in French Hill, Jerusalem for 16 years, and also headed the practical rabbinics training for Schechter Rabbinical Seminary students for 7 years. Rabbi Rowan Baker is committed both to a vibrant and inclusive Jewish approach in the state of Israel and to training skilled, knowledgeable, and compassionate rabbis for Israeli society. She is a former Rikma Fellow, Tannenbaum Fellow, and a Honey Foundation Fellow, and was the first Masorti rabbi and the first female rabbi ever to be invited to teach Torah at the Israeli president's residence. Chaya, it's an honor and privilege to turn the bima over to you.
I want to thank you all so much for everything you've done so far and for being here with us tonight. And just to pick up on Rabbi Golinkin's Torah teaching, I'll share a short story, short personal story of how that Torah actually manifests in real interactions. And I've told this story in several circles. So some of you may have heard it before. I just am so moved by it that I want to share it with you. My husband is in the reserves, and he has been since the first day. And my daughter is on the border. My husband is on the border of Lebanon, and my daughter is on the border of Egypt, and also in a combat unit in her regular army service. And the first few days, first few weeks, it's still very difficult, but the first with all the intensity and everything that was going on, and still is going on, it was really quite unbearable. I wasn't sleeping, I was barely breathing. And one night in the middle of the night, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, I wrote an email to the listserv that we have for women rabbis, women conservative rabbis. And I wrote to them, someone asked, how are you doing? So I wrote how we're doing. And I described what it's like to be a wife and a mother in a situation like this. And I said that it's hard for me to go to sleep because, well, I have this idea in my head that if I'm awake, then I'm guarding them. If I'm awake and I'm aware, I can protect them with my thoughts. And this was 3 o'clock in the morning, as I mentioned, and I wasn't going to sleep. And one of my wonderful colleagues from all the way across the ocean in Los Angeles, about as far as you can get, wrote back, Chaya, you can go to sleep. I'll take the night shift. And this story has been going with me throughout the past 6 weeks to teach how really that's what we need to be doing. We need to be taking each other's shifts. We need to be switching shifts and letting each other breathe and being together in the shift and protecting each other. And that's been the mission for the Rabbinical Seminary and all of the Schechter Institutes, as you've heard and as you'll continue hearing. The Rabbinical Seminary, we've asked ourselves, what is our unique contribution? How can we take a shift? What can we do to help alleviate some of the pain, to help to be there for people? So the first thing that we did was to create a hotline, a rabbinic hotline for questions of elut, of mourning and of burial, and all the complicated questions that might come up in this terrible situation that we've never experienced before. What do we do when someone is missing and we don't know what we're supposed to be doing halachically about in relation to their disappearance? What happens when you're sitting shiva for your father and then you are informed that your mother is also gone? What do you do first? Whom do you mourn? How do you conduct yourself? And also simple questions like, it's Shabbat, first Shabbat in the army. How do I observe Shabbat in a time like this? How do I observe Shabbat and perform my duties as a soldier? I'm sitting shiva for I've sat shiva for my mother, and now I need to know, this is the question on the screen that you see from our chat. I need to know when I get up from shiva, and where can I find a liberal congregation where a woman can say Kaddish. We've had a few questions like that, asking us, where can I find a community? I've been displaced from my home. Where in my vicinity can I find a community that will support me? This hotline started within 5 days of the attacks, with tremendous and amazing work by all the Schechter staff, really getting together to get this up in the air fast. Our students were receiving the calls and passing the questions on to a group of volunteer rabbis who would answer the questions, and we held a couple of training sessions for the students answering the calls and for the rabbis who would be answering the questions, and we've been trying to offer support in that way. On further along the line, our students have been stepping in for for communities who have no rabbis or whose rabbis have been drafted, or serving in the general, in the public sphere, bringing their rabbinic skills to the public sphere. In the picture you see, you see our students leading prayer service for in the square in Tel Aviv, a very central square in Tel Aviv, outside the Tel Aviv Museum, where the long table is, which I'm sure you've seen. And every night there's a prayer service there for the families who are sitting there. The hostage families convene there, and they sit there, and people come to them and talk to them. Some of them do, not all of them do, but because they started sitting there, people have sort of been attracted, been gravitating there to just think about the issue and talk about the issue and just be in it. And there are all kinds of interesting initiatives in that square. And one of them, as I said, is this prayer vigil that there is every night, every afternoon. So here in the picture, you can see our students leading it. About 150 people joined us in moving prayer, doing that. One of our students runs a center for evacuees in one of the hotels in Yam HaMelach in Ein Bokek, where she coordinates needs and helps take care of simple mundane needs and activities for parents, for children, taking care of spirit and of just day-to-day needs. Another student offers concert. He's a student who's a chazan, a cantor, who is offering free concerts and song events for communities who have, as I said, no rabbi or rabbis who are drafted. And another student is leading, also is going to join one of the communities that has no rabbi, and really kind of try to pull together the community, organizing community events and support. We're finding that the needs are so vast and so complicated. Almost every area of life that you'll see in Israel has been hurt, is struggling, is in pain. If it's families, of course, families who've lost loved ones, families who have injured loved ones, families whose homes have been destroyed, and families who've been displaced from their homes, and of course the families of the hostages, but also families of people who've been drafted, families of people who haven't been drafted and just have to protect their children from everything that they're seeing. Have to try to create normalcy and activities in all the grief and all the worry and all the fear, and try to create a sense of community and a sense of healing. So all of that, and of course financial issues that families are dealing with, and it just goes on and on. So we're trying to encourage our students, and our students are in fact really stepping up to be there in that place, to be rabbis. They're not yet ready to be rabbis, but they're being pushed into this position to be coordinators and helpers and enablers of healing and of community life and support.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Chaya Rowan Baker, for all that you're doing to give support to our communities out there very specifically, as well as to alleviate some of the pain that Israeli society is experiencing in this moment. It's now my privilege to turn to Dr. Perry Sinclair, who is the Susan and Scott Shea Tali Director General. She received her doctorate in Midrash from the Jewish Theological Seminary, my dear alma mater, and her master's in Jewish education from JTS's Davidson School of Education. Perry is a graduate of the Tali School in Hod HaSharon and a proud alumna of Noam, the Masorti Movement's youth movement. She has spent 15 summers in senior staff positions in Camp Ramah in the Berkshires, and I am very, very privileged to call her a colleague at the Schechter Institutes. Perry, I'm handing off to you.
Toda raba, Matt. Erev Tov, good evening or good morning. I don't know where you're all from, but
Perry, you're muted.
I'm muted. So I'll join my colleagues in thanking you all for being here with us and for supporting us in general, and especially during this very difficult period, and hope you're all well, because the shattering experience that we had on Simchat Torah clearly is affecting the entire world, and it's still unclear how much we will all be affected. I want to start by sharing something that Micha Goodman said a few weeks ago. He suggested that in Simchat Torah, Israelis experienced galut in a very, very visceral way, almost as if the state of Israel ceased to exist and we were all somewhere in Europe. It was shocking and it was shattering, and it caused people, even of my generation, who were born and raised in Israel, to have flashbacks to a time before we were even born, and raised images and memories that clearly we carry in our DNA, and we didn't realize how powerful they were. Tali is an organization that focuses on working to foster a meaningful, pluralist Jewish and Israeli identity in Israel. I think one thing that we are sure of is that we have no way of even beginning to imagine what long impact these events will have on our collective identity and our image as a people, as a free people in the Jewish democratic state of Israel. And as such, while much of the effort on the ground in Israel and the funding is going to address needs that were articulated by Yael and by Chaya, Tali has been providing for the entire Israeli school system. While most of Israeli society wasn't physically hit, we were all emotionally hit. The school system was shaken. Yael spoke of schools in Ofakim that haven't actually come back to regular studies yet. My daughter went back to full-time school only today, and we live in Modi'in, which is very it seems to be off the radar of missiles. And our work is aimed at educators who are charged not with the immediate day-to-day needs of the students and their families, but with reinforcing the children's belief in their future, in our future here, and their connection and our connection to Am Yisrael here and abroad. So once getting over our initial shock, we identified 3 things that we need to focus on, and they became the guidelines to all our work. First thing is that Tali needs to be here for our tzevet. I have a staff of 23 people who work for us and another 15 freelancers, and for all our partners around the country, the hundreds of teachers and principals who were affected by the events of Simchat Torah this year. We need to be sensitive and listen very carefully to hear what their needs are and not what we want to give, so that we can respond to their needs and the needs that change as the situation evolves. We need to engage all our efforts and try to be forward thinking, to anticipate additional needs, so that we could needs that aren't actually articulated even, so that we could set ourselves up to be able to respond to them as they become real needs of the school. So Tachlis, what we did after reaching out to all our colleagues and partners in the school is we created daily packets of educational resources. You can see that on the screen. Each day for 2 weeks, we sent out material focusing on a relevant theme, and it turned out to be very, very popular with teachers. We started this almost immediately, and a few days into our endeavor, there was a questionnaire sent out to teachers, and the response was that they want material, that they need educational resources to help them to fill their needs as they were teaching on Zoom for at least 2 weeks. After doing this for 2 weeks on a daily basis and listening to the teachers, we dialed it down, and we've been putting them out 3 or 4 times a week. And this material went out when the establishment, Ministry of Education, kind of froze. There was no guidance, nothing we ever heard from them. So we basically supplied a very big need. We opened a WhatsApp group, and 170 teachers joined it within the first week, out of which at least a third are teachers that have never had anything to do with Tali beforehand. This project has nearly tripled the traffic to our digital resources. So over the past month and a half, we've seen 9,000 people come into the Levana website. Most of them come in 2 or 3 times. And this is it makes us very happy. It opens up the entire world of Tali resources to people who might have not have used them in the past. We sent out material from the Tali Sidur for young kids, along with recordings, so that teachers could use them and do tefillot online. Those teachers who do that in their schools. We sent out units focusing on social emotional skills, like dealing with sadness or hanging on to hope, looking for things to be grateful for, and strengthening solidarity. And I could share that while most of the teachers using the material are here in Israel, we have had teachers contact us from Boston and from Latin America. They were called from Europe as well. Based on additional feedback that we got, you've run too quickly through the slides, Josh. I'm still on the first one. Based on additional feedback that we got, we're starting webinars this week, weekly webinars to unpack some of the material that we've sent out and help teachers through it. Second thing we did is donated a whole bunch of educational resources to Ganim that have been set up for evacuees in Ma'ale HaChamisha. We've offered this to many other educational centers, and as the requests come in, we've been sending material out. We've offered our experiential activities free of charge to education centers set up for the evacuees, and also for schools that weren't evacuated, schools that are in the center of Israel or in the southern part of northern Israel, who are also affected and are suffering from a shortage in teachers, because some of them have been called out to Miluim, or their spouses are in Miluim. So we've been sending out our madrichim, our facilitators as well for that. We've created, I'm on the third slide, we've created a platform for children to share prayers. We've sent it out to schools around the world. Currently, there are 22 schools, half of them from Israel and the other half from around the world. You can see it on the slide, that have sent in pictures and recordings that their students have shared, and that they want to be part of this this international platform. And we've also set this up as an opportunity to relaunch the Friends Across the Sea program that Rabbi Galin can share the third excerpt from at the beginning of his talk. There are 2 more things before I get cut off, because I've probably overspoken. The Schechter Institute and Tali have launched a new joint center for Jewish education. We call it the Israeli Lab for Jewish Education. And as part of that, there is a series being kicked off at the moment, teaching the book of Job, which unfortunately is very relevant for these times. And that was set up by Dr. Marva Shalev Morom, who was hired by Tali and Schechter for this purpose. And we will be offering a program, an accreditation program in bibliodrama. In bibliodrama as a tool for teachers to engage in social emotional learning. We're going to be starting that remotely in the second semester, and hope to provide another tool for teachers around the country.
Thank you so much, Perry. We're truly in awe of everything that you're doing to support the 65,000 students that are part of the Tali system, all of their administrators, their teachers, and internationally, everything that you're doing. Kol hakavod. I'm now delighted to turn to Rabbi Irena Gresivskaya, who is the director of Midreshet Schechter. Irena was born in the former Soviet Union and came to Israel as a teenager in 1994. She had the privilege of studying at the Jewish Theological Seminary and was ordained in the Schechter Rabbinical School. Midreshet Schechter supports Masorti communities in Ukraine and operates the Neve Schechter Center for Art and Culture in Tel Aviv. Irena, as you can imagine, is wildly talented in languages, fluent in Russian, Hebrew, English, and with working knowledge of Ukrainian. Irena lives in Tel Aviv with her husband Lev and 3 children. In addition, as a result of the war in Ukraine, they have adopted a 4th child. Irena, it's terrific to have you here. I also want to point out, just before Irena speaks, that the link for giving to our emergency activities is in the chat. You're welcome to press on that and give generously. And I also want to point out too, want to encourage you to put any questions that you have for our presenters in the chat, and towards the end, we will give our presenters a chance to respond to those questions. Irena.
Thank you, Matt. In Neve Schechter, we decided to address a huge challenge that was created for a big wave of immigration that came to Israel in the past year. They came from Russia and Ukraine, fleeing from war, and actually running away from one war, they found themselves in the midst of another war. Being newcomers to the country, they have less support system, and many suffer from returning post-trauma. Believe me or not, but it's a very harsh absorption. It's even harder for the artists who are really need fully understand the culture, and very hard for them to find an opportunities to express themselves right now. So we decided to launch a project for Russian and Ukrainian speaking artists. 3 weeks ago, we launched this project. It's a Beit Midrash where the artists can learn Jewish and Israeli culture, but also meet key people for their profession in Israel and create a supporting cohort for their career. Artists come all around the country. Some of them moved to the center after the war started. They also receive a psychological support and art therapy to deal with the current situation, and create their own art projects to reflect on their experience and to process them. The project really became process your experience through art and Jewish learning in order to create and help other immigrants through your own art. Midreshet Schechter is deeply appreciative of a remarkable family from Florida who choose to fully support our program at Neve Schechter, which gives assistance to this talented group of young artists from FSU and Ukraine. This is a much needed embrace for these young adults integrating into Israel's society and culture. Actually, last week, this group of artists visited our new exhibition in Neve Schechter, which is, you can see the pictures here. The artists turned the gallery into a therapy space using mushrooms that grow in the gallery. This is the famous bio-artist Sharon Glasberg. And the space allows the therapy using breathing techniques. Through art, you can really get a moment of relaxation and think differently. Find some peace and shalva through art and therapy. One of the artists told me after the session that for her, every week meetings are really as a physical breath of air, and they're needed as much. It is just the feeling that you are not alone, and you can breathe and create again in a new language and a new environment. We are planning now a new exhibition where those artists and many others, including ordinary people, will create their prayers. The gallery will turn into a radio station, receiving and sending the prayers to all in need. Right now, we can only keep our breath. But we are already thinking about finding words to express the pain and the hope. We will send our prayers to the families of those who were abducted and those who suffer. We will create a special tiva, a special place for those prayers, and it will be physically delivered to those who need it. We would really appreciate your support for our next project.
Thank you so much, Irena. Just absolutely marvelous, the scope of what is happening at Neve Schechter. And, you know, truly our hearts go out to these young artists that came here from the former Soviet Union and Ukraine, escaping one war and ended up in another war. And as you said, we're so grateful that we're able to give them both the emotional and psychological support that they need, and the creative support that they need as young artists in Tel Aviv, so that they can integrate further into Israeli society. We now want to open it up a bit and give you a chance to ask specific questions about the emergency projects that we have been implementing. So if anyone would like to take themselves off of mute, and it would be great to hear your voice. So please do not be shy, and here's your chance to chime in.
Hi, Matt. It's Arlene Priest.
Great to see you, Arlene.
Good to see
Hello,
you.
Arlene. Good to see you.
Hello, David. I was very interested in the Ofakim, what was said about that. I know I have supported the other kibbutz Oza. I can't remember the full name. That was also a lot of hostages were taken. So I am going to, Aaron and I will send a donation earmarked for that particular community.
Thank you.
And it was good to hear the report and all the reports. And David, it was good to see you, and you're still out there, and just be well. And Matt, it's good to see you, and just be well and have strength.
Likewise. Thank you so much
I
for your
return to
support.
Israel, God willing, tonight.
Okay.
Nadia Levine writes in the chat that she was moved to tears by your presentation, Yael. And she asks, what other types of therapies are being utilized to help survivors get over their trauma?
Okay, so there's a resilience center in Ofakim where people can go and receive trauma treatment. We also, because it's not enough, we also organized within the Resilience Center a group of psychologists from university, from the Ben Gurion University in Beersheba. They come to Ofakim once a week and they see people. We also found out that people are struggling with their rights. I mean, what are they entitled to from the government as their rights, while they are under such not just trauma, but terrible living conditions. And there's a group of lawyers that come pro bono to Ofakim and give some legal advice on all their rights, help them to fill up all the forms to the National Insurance Institution. And you have to see the soup kitchen. I mean, it turned into a massive aid sort of agency, and we provide formula for babies and toys for the bomb shelters, because there are lots of the people in Ofakim, they don't have a shelter at home. They have to rush to a public bomb shelter, and they sit there for hours or days, and they're quite bored. So we also supply toys. This is sort of the main, these are the main things that are done. But I have to tell you, I only just learned yesterday that the husband of Rachel Edry, you know, the husband of this lady that I met, and the couple that were taken hostage, he's in hospital. He had a massive heart attack, and he's in a very, very bad condition at the moment. And another family that I saw them about 2 weeks ago when they came back from Ofakim. The terrorists actually penetrated into their house and they were shooting people on the streets from their house. And it was all recorded on their security cameras, so they could see a lot.
Yeah.
And
Talk to.
he had a stroke the day before yesterday. I mean, the trauma is affecting people now, even worse than at the beginning. I mean, people are physically ill now. It's a huge problem. The things that were done before don't seem to really help. I mean, they need something else. They need to rebuild their how do you say emun? The trust in the system. They feel as if there's no ground under their feet. They are really in a very, very bad situation. So I'm not sure that what is done, I'm not doing it personally, but what is done is enough. And to be honest with you, I don't know what is enough for them.
Thank you, Yael. Any other questions that you have about any of our efforts or projects? I also want to open it up to our presenters if there's anything else that you'd like to share. A brief
Matt, I
story.
just wanted to mention that there are two other projects that we could not present today. One is special MA scholarships for people who are evacuated from their homes. We're going to give them very generous scholarships if they want to study at Schechter, and also to tour guides who are all unemployed now in Israel. And the other is another hotline run by our hospital chaplaincy graduates. It's a hotline not for halachic questions, but for people who simply want to call in and speak to a trained professional about what they're going through. So in addition to the projects that were presented here, we're running quite a few other projects that we did not have time to present today.
Yeah, Rabbi Galinkin, I believe we need a part 2.
Well, maybe in a few weeks.
It's Isabel speaking. I have relatives who have been like 3 generations already in Kibbutz Nahal Oz, which I know is on the border of Gaza. We did get some information that some of them were evacuated. I believe they evacuated the entire kibbutz. My relatives, I know, had relatives inland. They went to Petach Tikva, they went to Modain, and were taken care of. But I would wonder, about the rest of the people there. I was contacted by one of the younger members of before this happened, who remembers growing up in the kibbutz when they played with the Arab children, when they played with the kids across the street. And it was so sad when she spoke about it because she wanted to get her kids out of that situation. It was getting dangerous 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And, that's what I was helping her with. But
Thank you, Isabel.
how the kibbutzim, were they destroyed? Do you know? Does anyone
Yes, they
know?
were. Most of the kibbutzim along the borderline were destroyed. Some more than others, but Kfar Aza was destroyed. Be'eri was destroyed. Nir Oz was destroyed. In other kibbutzim like Erez and Nir Am, less destruction, but it's still it looks like a battle zone.
I want to turn to our presenters now and just ask very quickly, if you had more resources to bring more projects out there, what would that project or idea be? Chaya, if we can begin with you, that would be great.
Sure. I just want to pick up on Isabel's question. Also, we have a student in the rabbinical seminary who actually works in Tfus Be'eri, in the Be'eri printer. It's one of the biggest printing centers in Israel, and they're in charge of a lot of the government printing, and it's really a it's just by chance she worked there before all this happened, and and now she's one of the few workers who are still working there, because a lot of the workers have either been murdered or kidnapped or just won't go back. So she sends us reports a couple of times a week with pictures of really, like Yael said, really severe destruction, and but also tremendous strength of spirit of the people who are going back and trying to not yet rebuild, but to keep what they can going, and to hold on to life. So we're trying to be there for her and to see, to walk her through that as well. And to answer your question, Matt, I think I would one of the two things I would say. One is something that we are already trying to plan, and we hope that we can implement, is a course that we will offer to the general public, a course led by our Mashpi'a Ruchanit, our spiritual
mentor,
Rabbi Feigelson, which will focus on how do we find what are our spiritual resources for dealing with all of this, to try to kind of reconnect people back to life and back to growth and back to building, and finding the resources that we can within ourselves and in our tradition to motivate us. So that's one thing, and the other thing is really to I hope this can happen, because a lot of things, there are a lot of factors here to take into account, but seeing as we do have this connection with Be'eri, I hope that we can in some way create something through our student Inbal, who's very connected to that place. I hope that we can create something to bring, again, hope and growth and spiritual guidance and support to that community and to the people who are already able to reconnect there.
Thank you so much, Chaya. Irena, I just want to ask if you just say a few sentences about the Radio Tfilot program that we're going to be running at Neve Schechter.
It's actually art therapy through art, and we're creating a project where the gallery will turn into a radio where the prayers will be creating, and through writing prayers, people will process what they are going through. It's actually for everyone, and I hope we will be able to bring our project to Ofakim too, creating art therapy for the people in Tel Aviv, and bringing their prayers to be heard through the world, hopefully too.
Thank you, Irena. And Perry, take yourself
you're
off.
on mute,
I
Perry.
did. I just
You're on
did.
mute.
Okay, no, I'm not muted anymore. There's something I feel like I need to say. Tali isn't dealing with people's loss of income, or with the fact that houses have been destroyed, and all the very, very tangible things that Gail spoke about, and they're definitely top priority in Israel at the moment. And you can't. We have to make sure that the all the kidnapped people are returned home, and we need to win the war, and we need to rebuild settlements. We also need to make sure we, and this is what we're focusing on, that that we maintain social cohesiveness, and that the people don't want to run away from Israel, right? There isn't a mass exodus from Israel. We entered the war, unfortunately, after a year of angst and social what's the word I'm looking for? Fragmentation
Tension.
and a lot of even hate within Israeli society. And these are things that Tali addresses. And I'll be very, very frank and share that, these things, we need to make sure that we deal with these things as well and that they don't get left behind. Tali is it's most likely not going to receive funds from the Israeli government that it has been receiving over the past few years because of the cutbacks that we need to do because of the war, right? Obviously, there are going to be major kitzutzim in the Israeli budget, and the first things to go are going to be education. And therefore, I'm just putting that out there. I think that if we don't deal with the future, there'll be no point, unfortunately, with everything else we do. So I urge everyone to first of all give to people who've lost their homes and for security, but I also think it's very important to think about the future and think about how we mend Israeli society and maintain the bridges between Israeli society and Jews around the world.
Thank you so much, Peri. Hayom katzar v'amelacha merubeh. The day is short and the work is great, and the needs here are so great. I'm very, very conscious that we're approaching the finish line, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I want to close with just a very, very brief word of Torah, and that is in this week's Parsha, Parshat Vayetze, our matriarch Leah gives birth to her fourth son, and we are told in the Parsha, Vateled ben, she gives birth to a son, Vatomer hapam odeh et Adonai, al ken kara shemo Yehuda. She gives birth and says, this time I will thank God. And so she called him Yehuda. There's a teaching in Tanakh, Kishmo Kenhu, just as one's name, so too is one's essence. How beautiful it is that the essence of Yehuda, Yehudim, Jews, is this notion of hakarat hatov, this notion of recognizing appreciation and giving thanks. As we close, we cannot thank all of you enough for your chesed, for your loving kindness, for your generosity and responsiveness. For all of you in the United States, we wish you a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. And of course, may we know better days ahead here in Israel and in the Jewish world. Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel lives. Thank
Amen.
you so much, so much to all of our presenters, to Rabbi David Galinkin, dear president of the Schechter Institutes, to Chaya, Peri, Irena, and Yael. We cannot thank you enough for giving us these beautiful, beautiful snapshots of the emergency projects that are taking place on the ground now. And of course, again, I encourage you all to give and give generously so that we could support and even expand these projects and invest more deeply in the healing of Israeli society. Erev Tov from Jerusalem.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.